Welcome to another episode of Working for a Dream podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Bolaños. I've got an awesome guest with me today, in person, in my office, a good friend from one of our coaching masterminds where we met, a fellow Houstonian, lives in Houston, and he is an entrepreneur. He is a coach himself, and he's also a military veteran, special forces. And so I'm super excited to have you here, bro, and looking forward to jamming together. Jeff, welcome to the podcast, man.
Absolutely, Patrick. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. This is the first time I've done an in-studio podcast interview, so this is cool.
Half studio, half office, half all kind of stuff. Yeah, man, it's cool. This really helps a ton. I think I prefer to do in-studio, in-person interviews. It just helps connect more.
Yep.
So I recommend it. I know you just launched your podcast called The Tactical Empire, and we're all going to be doing several power moves. And so I want to jump into your story. The premise of my podcast it's called Working for a Dream, and I am a firm believer that everybody is working on a dream, and it's a never-ending pursuit. So love having guests like yourself that are actually doing the things that they want to do. And so tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Where you from, what you do, and let's dive into it.
Yeah, I'm originally from Central Illinois. Moved down to Texas in 2008 so that my wife could do her PhD at Rice. And we just never left. I was in the corporate world at that time doing IT work, and then over time kind of just decided for a different path to do our own thing. Mm-hmm. And so we opened the gym in 2011 in the Galleria area, and we've never really looked back. So she does fitness and nutrition stuff. I do the gym, and we own together 68 rental properties.
That's awesome.
So
how's that going?
We were just talking about that. Yeah. It's going. There's always issues, but the big thing was the freeze that we had a couple months ago in Texas. It burst. I think we're up to like 25, 26 properties that were affected with burst pipes. And so some of that stuff takes a while to kind of present itself, because you'll go fix the initial leak that you think is the issue, and then they'll call you 2 weeks later and be like, well, our closet ceiling just fell in again, and in the back bedroom or whatever, and you're like, fuck, there's another a different source of the leak. And so then you're messing around in the attic trying to find it, and then you've got all the sheetrock and everything that's going on right now with cost of materials. And so we've been literally working on that for 5 months at this point, which I thought I had it resolved in like 5 days. I thought I was like hero of the day resolving all of our leaks, and then no.
They just start showing up. That's funny that we're talking about the freeze right now. One of my podcasts that I did with Zach, another special forces that I met through Apex as well. I remember the freeze, man. That kicked my ass. I lost power for 2 days. I'm from a third world country.
Yeah.
I know what it is to go without power for 12 hours at a time, maybe 2 days at a time. But I've never not been without power in the freezing cold. It literally kicked my ass. It had me questioning my existence. 4 kids, staying warm in Houston. Bro, it was crazy. So I do sympathize with what you're going through. It's crazy that you're still having to deal with that. I'm a manufacturer of food trucks, so we know that everything right now is crazy, material-wise.
Right. Yes.
So my mindset has been very, very challenged the past couple of weeks. A lot of things that could go wrong are going wrong. Mm-hmm. So I know that you're a coach, mm-hmm. right? You coach other people. You're a mentor. You consult businesses.
Yes.
Let's dive into a little bit about how you help people like myself. If I were to hire you as a coach, what your approach is and what you focus on to help people break their limiting beliefs, et cetera.
Yeah, I really think that I focus more on just solving problems, identifying gaps that you may not recognize. Because as you know, I mean, if we're all in the shit, like it's hard to see, mm-hmm. and get the whole picture of what you're dealing with. I mean, I'm not impervious to that just because I coach. I'm dealing with a lot of force of average type things right now as well. And so basically what we do is just cover everything and make sure that you're telling yourself the entire story, right? Because a lot of times we have tendency to feel sorry for ourselves, make excuses, like, and we're like, oh, this is why it's happening to me. And my job, I feel like, is to snap you out of that shit and be like, well, it doesn't matter why it's happening. Like, where do we go from here?
Right.
Or how do you work your way out of it? Because if you start building wins, you will climb out of any situation, really. I mean, there's no situation that doesn't have a resolution. And so it's hard to see when you're emotional about it.
Right.
And so, like, I think a coach's job in general, whether it's me or anybody else, is to remove the emotion from the situation and kind of look at the whole picture and say, well, these are the gaps that you might be missing, or here is the simplest thing you can do to get a win today and start moving in the right direction. Because oftentimes it feels like we're just getting our ass kicked over and over and over again, and like nothing's going right. But what you don't recognize is, like, we do so much stuff on a regular basis that there are a list of wins, like, every single day. I mean, you're handling your business, whether it's with your fitness or whatever. Like, did you wake up this morning? Fuck, that's a start.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That's my favorite one of each day. Yeah. I'm like, hell yes, I won again. So whatever hits you after that, like, I mean, you really have to just put it into perspective. Like, my kids are healthy. Like, no matter what goes on throughout the day, you just have to have perspective. And so, like, from a coaching perspective,
yep.
You asked the question, and I think it's really just distilling it down to what you need as a client, and like what you're facing, what you're telling yourself, what the real story is, and then, like, how do we start working our way out of it?
Right. How much do you feel, and I know the answer to this question because I know it absolutely puts you in a better position than most anybody else, but the military prepares people to keep emotion out of decision-making, or help you manage your emotions better than a civilian, for example. So I don't know. I think the listeners would like to learn a little bit about how that prepared you to eliminate emotion out of your decision-making on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, it allows you to compartmentalize. I mean, you recognize your emotions and you give them credence, but then you have to realize what your objective is.
Yep.
And so I think we have maybe an innate ability or a trained ability to be able to focus and shift focus away from our emotions. And so you can recognize, process, accept the emotions that you're feeling, but then also over here you've got this objective that you need to continue to move forward towards. And I think that that's where the people from the special operations community, certain military branches, things like that, they do have somewhat of an advantage. I mean, it gets, like, ground out of you once you're in civilian society. And I suffered from that for a long time when I was in the corporate world. And I think it led to, like, a downhill spiral. And so if you're not challenging yourself, if you're not doing hard things, if you're not recognizing a level of discipline that makes you internally proud, I think that you're not in a great place.
Right.
And I believe that for everyone. I just don't think most people recognize it or have ever been challenged with having to kind of go there personally, because we live a pretty
comfortable life.
Yes, very comfortable.
A lot of people decide to be comfortable. So on my story, when I used to be in the corporate world, and I used to be 45, 50 pounds overweight. So I was probably weighing like 245, 250. I'm at 212, 215 right now. And I was just living a comfortable lifestyle. I would never challenge myself. I would come home after work, watch the tube, live for the weekend, played fantasy football. I would spend 12 hours a day on Sundays in front of the TV watching football, like if they fucking were going to help me pay the bills.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So what do you do to challenge yourself right now?
Well,
especially after being in the military. I mean, you got to find some pretty hard shit to do, right?
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy physical challenges because my stuff, like, I think people can challenge themselves in a variety of different ways, whether it's taking on a new hobby, learning a new, like, trade, things like that. That's just never been my thing.
Right.
I'm more of a hard-headed, like, I just need physical pain and suffering. And so, like, that's where I get it from. And one thing I realized when I was, like, going down the wrong path, if you will, is that I just really wasn't fulfilled because I wasn't taking on those challenges. And I think part of it was, like, I was still in a corporate job. I got injured and I didn't really take care of it. So I kind of just pushed things off and said, well, I don't do that stuff anymore because I'm hurt.
Right.
And so, like, that led to compounding problems, right?
It leads to, I mean, they say that every excuse is a good excuse, so it just led to having a very good excuse.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so ultimately it was eye-opening to say, okay, well, I need to, I'm 35, 36 years old, whatever, and, like, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life saying I'm not going to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a weird realization of a really poor excuse I was making for myself.
Yep.
Because, I mean, I was doing the same type of thing, happy hour on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever. And, I mean, I distinctly remember we had lunch with a guy yesterday who I used to work with, and he reminded me of the fact that we used to take off the first 2 days, Thursday and Friday of March Madness. Like, we used to take the day off on vacation days, and we would sit at the bar from 9 in the morning until the games were over at night. And I'm like, wow, that's so far removed from the existence we live now, which is like I couldn't care less about 99% of sports and don't pay attention to any of that stuff anymore.
But you used to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it was important.
Yeah.
Is your friend, is that no longer important to him either?
Somewhat. He's in a different industry now.
Okay.
Yeah. So he still definitely is a sports fan, pays attention to everything. Like, I think that once, like, you get into business, that you can kind of fill that void with your competitiveness and things like that. So
absolutely, business
becomes your sport, if you will.
I don't believe I don't remember the last time that I sat in front of the TV to make sure that I was catching so last night before going to bed, I caught a soccer game, the Gold Cup, the U.S. versus Mexico. It was a great game. The fucking U.S. won 1-0 last night. It was great. But I think that used to hold me back a ton. I'm still a huge sports fan, though. Like, I'm a huge baseball guy. Mm-hmm. So now I'm using it and I'm funneling it into a passion to help others. My baseball academy, I don't know if you're familiar. So now I try to, if I'm passionate about the game of baseball, I want to be able to help others achieve what I didn't achieve. Mm-hmm. It was my dream to play in Major League Baseball. I didn't love the process. A funny story, I was thinking about the things that I would probably write in a book one day. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I'll ever write a book, but I probably will. I'm not sure yet. But I used to play soccer and baseball growing up. I played soccer and baseball in high school. I went to school at Lindenwood University in St. Louis, Missouri, where I walked on to the soccer team. I was a goalkeeper back then, and then I would vacation back to Nicaragua in the summers. Well, in Nicaraguan summers, it's about socializing. Mm-hmm. It's about going out. A lot of people drink a lot when they go back to the country, and they drink almost every single day. It's partying every single day for 60 days, 90 days. And I remember I went back and I hired a coach, my old goalie coach, and I told him, listen, I'm not a starter on this soccer team. I want to be a starter. I will pay you to start coaching me. So when I get back to school, I'll be a starter. And the first week was great. Every day up at 6 o'clock in the morning, going to the school, working out. And all it took was one time, going out one night. My friends convinced me to go out once. And I never went back to get the coaching.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to become a starter. I always was second. And I look back and I think, holy shit. What if somebody had just told me, you know what? This is not what your life, if you want to be great in life, this is not what it's going to take. Mm-hmm. I didn't love the process. And all it took was a few friends telling me to go out to drink with them on a daily basis, and it happened every day for the rest of the summer that summer.
Yeah.
I don't like living with regrets, bro. And that's one of the regrets that I have in life. So right now, I do like to challenge myself. I don't know if you're a martial arts guy, but I do jiu-jitsu. I'm trying to get my blue belt here in the next few months. And I also want to do a triathlon. I'm trying to finish a half Ironman. So that's something physically. And to everybody watching, our listeners, I have a lot of food truck owners that might be listening. I want to talk about the scarcity mindset because I know you're big on mindset stuff. Being in a food truck can lead you to think scarce. It's a small little area. You don't have enough room for a lot of stuff. Your sales are not as big as compared to a restaurant. So you can start thinking, holy shit, this is a lot of work. And I see it in the industry. There's a lot of scarcity. The first thing they think when they're working is, I don't want to help others. I'm going to keep everything to myself. What's your take on scarcity mindset, how you overcome it, how you teach that to your students?
Yeah, it's one of the most frustrating mindsets to break, honestly. But I could see it in the food truck industry 100% because, I mean, the numbers are just smaller. It doesn't churn out the same receipts as a restaurant would, right? But I think they're thinking too small at that point. I also can't stand when people are really worried about, like, they don't want to network and create abundance in the community.
Right.
Because, I mean, we saw that a lot in the gym space when we opened our gym back in 2011 because everybody was acting like they had, like, proprietary knowledge and, like, people were going to drive across town to go to their gym as opposed to my gym or whatever, when that's absolutely not the truth. I mean, there's studies all over that, like in Houston, you probably wouldn't go more than 3 or 4 miles to go to your gym.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And you either live or work right there.
Yep.
And, I mean, because 3 or 4 miles can take you a half hour here, right? And so there's just so many, and I mean, you've experienced this through Apex as well, is that, like, there's 7 billion people in the world. You only need a sliver of them to be your customers.
Yep.
And especially in, like, a gym setting, like, I don't need 50,000 members. I need 150, 200, right? And that is a small portion of, I mean, there's 7 million people in Houston and the metro. And so, like, I don't need very many of them.
Yep.
Right? So I think that the collective of food truck operators could benefit from networking and helping each other out to be better operators.
Yep.
And I mean, we dealt with this just last week. I went out with one of the Green Beret guys from the event out to No Label.
Yep.
And whoever was there that day with his food truck, he was a one-man band, and he just didn't have any business savvy. I mean, the food was good, but he was very slow, and, like, people were complaining and everything else. And so I think that a lot of times, probably what you see a lot of times in the food truck industry is very similar to the gym industry and very similar in entrepreneurship anyway, is that people have a skill set or a passion and they turn it into a job.
Yep.
And they say, now I'm a business owner.
Yep.
And the reality is there isn't. They aren't. They just threw up a little bit of capital and they bought themselves a job where they can make their own schedule. But then what they realize very quickly is that now there's these constraints on them and the walls are coming in. Because if you don't show up and work your food truck, if you don't show up at your gym, you don't get paid.
Yep.
And like, that's a daunting thing to realize after you've put down some cash and taken this risk, and then 2 or 3 years into it, you're just fucking worn out.
Yep.
And you're like, I don't see a way out. So they feel like they're drowning. But I mean, that's where, like, the collective group of them, because they're surely super successful owners of food trucks.
The minority, obviously, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, they're doing business right.
Yep.
They're working themselves out of their trucks so that they can focus on big picture stuff like scaling.
Exactly.
Like, if each truck can make $500 a day net profit, then all I need to do is focus on how many trucks I need
to get to that level.
Reverse what I need.
Right.
Like, okay, I want $50K a week in net income or whatever, right? So how many trucks do I need? It's just it's math at that point.
Exactly.
And that's it.
Yeah. And so I was in our Facebook group, I was having a discussion about scaling because I want to help our food truck owners break through those limiting beliefs so I can help them scale and get them to the level of, wanting more, doing more, so they can have more time to do the things they want and not have a job. And I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Lifestyle Investor, which is really interesting, but basically breaking down how much you need to make on a monthly basis to cover your living expenses, and then how much more you need to do the things that you want to do. And so one guy posted, I've owned 2 food trucks for the past 30 years, and I feel super successful. And that's great. But only 2 food trucks in over 30 years? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think you cut yourself short, right? I didn't want to be insulting, but I pretty much, hey, bro, that tells me everything about you that I need to hear. 2 food trucks over 30 years is not probably somebody that's looking to be aggressive or scale or doing those things. And he felt that I was attacking him, but I really wasn't attacking him. I was just telling him, hey, dude, it's your prerogative. And there's people out there that are going to live their life that way. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to coaching, goes back to working on yourself. You have a coaching program. Can we talk a little bit about that? Tell us a little bit about your coaching program, what it is.
Personally, I am only doing private clients right now. So I've only got a handful of private clients that I work with. And then I run a mastermind for another company, Two Brain Business, which is a fitness business company. But I run a mastermind for them as well. But I only have a handful of my own.
You run their mastermind. Mm-hmm. And what is that mastermind? Is that a mastermind to help them get better in that business, or what is that? How does that work?
Well, it's the upper echelon of the gym owners that are part of that group, and so like it's the top 5-10% in that group. So mm-hmm. they've ascended to a level where they're not in the day-to-day operations necessarily, unless they choose to be.
Yep.
And then we're working on more of a holistic picture for them as entrepreneurs instead of like specifically gym specifics.
Okay.
We're working on like long-term investing, wealth accumulation, like trusts,
and
wills.
You lead that mastermind.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. So there's probably some proprietary stuff there that you don't want to share, or?
Well, yeah. Well, I don't. It's not necessarily that I can't share it. I mean, it's not. It's just normal stuff. It's similar to what I teach my one-on-one clients, obviously.
Yep.
Because I mean, we're just focused on a holistic approach to entrepreneurism. Like instead of being the guy who bought yourself a job anymore,
mm-hmm. Yep.
like now it's time to work on yourself again.
Yep.
Your relationships, your fitness, your marriage, your kids, your actual long-term wealth.
Yep.
Because I don't want you having this food truck.
Yep.
And like 30 years from now, you've still got to be the guy turning the key on it, or you guys can't pay your rent at the end of the month.
Right.
And like that's so you've got to siphon off some of your profits over time and start accumulating assets with them, mm-hmm. whatever asset class that is that you choose. I mean, we teach a variety of them, but like the idea is you don't want to be left with just your primary business as your only sole source of income.
Absolutely.
So
that's something that I struggle with, right? We have the source of income. We've built this company in 4 years, and it's the sole provider for my income, my partner's income, and it's tough to go in and try to diversify my income stream. Mm-hmm. I've focused 100% in making sure that this company grows to the point where it's at a level that it doesn't need me. So I removed myself 100% from sales, right? That felt awkward, still feels awkward. I am looking for other team members to help scale the business. Mm-hmm. To hopefully one day I do invest in certain, I don't want to call them, they're not side hustles, but passive income.
Yeah.
like a Walmart automation store. I bought one of those. I still haven't had any returns on that, but I bought one. Then we invested in an inevitable food truck, which is going to require that I build a team around running that food truck. So I got to make sure that, one, I have the team to run it, and two, that I have the time to allocate some focus to it. Because if I don't, it's probably not going to succeed.
Right.
So I'm putting a lot of things on my plate that I know if I don't work on myself, I'm probably not going to be successful at it. Because any little hiccup here and there is going to set me back. And then I'm going to feel the pressure. I feel the pressure every single day.
Right.
But the things that we do, right? We're in Apex. We do the work despite everything going on around us.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a massive facility that's awesome. And so, I mean, what you're building, you're still in the growth phase. Yep. I mean, 4 years in is new, man. Right. Like, so there's no better ROI in your cash than dumping it back into your business.
Exactly.
There's no question about it. And
yep.
like, that's the teetering point that entrepreneurs have to kind of recognize. And especially in like a manufacturing business, you can produce multiple 7-8 figures in this business, obviously. So when is that point of diminishing returns, of dumping continued capital into the business? And it all depends on the business class.
Yep.
Because if your ceiling is $1 billion a year, then you're going to put way more fucking money in that thing because it's a cash register.
Absolutely.
And if you can get 35% returns in your business and oversee it and shepherd it to make sure that you're getting 35% returns,
yep.
You'd be stupid to point your fucking money anywhere else.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
So I think that's where sometimes people get confused on that stuff. I mean, like, you think Jeff Bezos was putting money in anything else?
Probably not.
I mean, maybe for tax purposes only, but like, the focus was the bookstore that turned into a dick rocket, and like, and now he's a billionaire upon billions. I mean, so like, those guys stayed focused. Bill Gates, same way, like focus on their singular deal, right? So, I mean, I do a bunch of things, but I think for me, I saw, being in the gym industry, I saw, and people would disagree with me on this, I'm sure, but like, there is a ceiling on how much money you're going to pull off of like a boutique studio, right? Which is what I run, 150, 200 members at a time, right? Like, if you do $1 million, it's a super successful single gym. Let's say it's 30% profit, which is fantastic, but
sounds like awesome.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
And so your choices at that point are either this is all you want to make ever, or you're going to open more
locations,
gyms, right?
Franchise model, et cetera, et cetera.
Franchise is an option, or just continue to open them
yourself
and own them, right? And so, but for me, being in a service-based industry was not ideal for me. Like, the issues you dealt with to reach any sort of ceiling were just very cumbersome, because you're dealing with people issues all the time.
Yep.
And we all are, but like, it's a different level when you've got 10 staff members and 200 clients and everybody's emotional and got all these issues, right? And so like, it just becomes a lot to manage. And then you can't run big staffs. So like, when one person leaves, like, that's a key like hole in your staff as well. Yeah. So like, scaling to 10 or 20 is a huge commitment, and you've got to like create a layer of leadership that manages the whole operation and everything else. So for me, I was just like, I like the gym that I have. I'm going to run it, and we're going to take it to a certain level, and I'm going to siphon off that money and put it into real estate. And so like, that was our decision, and we've driven down that road for the last 2 years. And like I said, I mean, we've got a handful of properties. We're just getting started.
So let's, rentals, properties. How'd you get into it? Let's see if our listeners can learn a little bit about how to get started in the rental business. Just a few nuggets here and there, nothing.
I started, I I bought an apartment complex, a 7-unit apartment complex when I was 26 years old in Illinois.
That's awesome.
After I got out of the military, I had that apartment, and then I had a couple of rentals. And
you managed it yourself?
Yes. And then we moved down here in 2008. So I owned the stuff for 2 years, and then management took care of it after that. And I ended up holding that stuff for 5 more years while we were in Texas. Sold it in 2013 and kind of cashed out of all that stuff. And then I wasn't in real estate until the very end. I think I bought our first property in Texas in December 31st of 2018.
Okay.
So we've only been in the game since 19 down here, back in it. We have a variety of about half single family homes, and then about half small multi-unit properties.
What do you like the most about doing this? Owning rental properties?
The most about it is I'm not a very smart guy. It's very simplistic to me. Like, I understand it fundamentally.
Okay.
And so I also like that it moves slower than the stock market. I don't trust the stock market. I mean, it's manipulated, in my opinion, by forces I can't control.
I don't even want to get into the stock market right now because I'm down a shit ton of money.
And real estate is different in that if you pay attention to trends, you can start seeing things happening almost as far out as 2 years out, but definitely within 6 months. The thing that I enjoy about especially single family rentals is that they're nearly liquid in that almost anything I own, I could get the cash out of and sell within 45 days, start to finish,
right?
If I needed the money.
Now, I don't know anything about real estate investing or real estate. I've read a few things here and there. 45 days. Does that apply in any market? Like, I know right now it's
right now
it's like you can sell it in probably like a day.
You're right.
Back in 2018, would it have been 45 days, or is it longer, or is there that risk? But
yeah, there was about 2.5 months of inventory at that point in time. So you'd be looking at similar. It depends on how well connected you are, though. Like, I know tons of investors, and so like if we got in a pinch, I'd be like, hey guys, I've got these 5, who wants them? And like, I could get cash for them in like 10 days.
Got it.
And so like attending events, networking, just like everything else. I mean, if you're interested in something, you need to kind of dig into it and learn and meet the people that are doing it. And that will lead to more flexibility in what you're doing.
Okay.
Whether it's from a capital standpoint, or you're trying to raise capital, or you want to do a JV situation because, like, hey, I've got deals, you've got money, like, let's get together and split the equity on this thing.
Okay.
That stuff happens all the time. I mean, there's really no limitation in the real estate market outside of, like, in the real estate space, the only limitation is, like, how willing you are to network and then be creative and continue to learn.
Cool. How did you land your first multifamily? Did it fell on your lap somehow? Did you do a little research? Like, what was the process like in defining your first investment property?
I mean, I'd watched my family like flip houses. We lived in them and flipped them.
Got it.
Like from a very early age.
Okay.
Like, I think I moved like 4 to 6 times in 2nd grade.
No way.
And and so we would buy a property and live in it and renovate it and move, and we did that. And so I just think real estate was in my blood. My sister does it too.
No way.
So
that's cool. So it was in your family.
Yeah.
You understood it. And then, but that 7-unit multifamily apartment complex.
I just knew I wanted to be in real estate, and so I went and met with bankers and said, who's going to give me the money for this? And it was different back then because it was till 2006.
They were giving away money like crazy.
Well, no, Not so much, but it was almost there. Yeah. But like the difference was though, there was the banking regulations were different. So you could go to a local bank or a local credit union and I could say, Patrick, like, I'm a good guy. Like, let's meet each other. And like, you could be the decision maker. And there's not a lot of banks like that anymore.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it wasn't a crazy expensive deal. I think
like the deals, the napkin deals that used to happen, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, it was only a couple $100,000. It wasn't like I wasn't asking for $5 million. They green lighted it and loaned me some capital reserves so that I had cash in the bank too. And I got into that thing and started learning lessons. Self-managed it, and so.
What are your thoughts? What's going to happen with the news that just came out that they ended the moratorium? What are your thoughts on the real estate market? Like, how does that play out in your head?
I don't know. Based on what I'm seeing, I mean, I don't think it's going to affect anything in Texas because like there hasn't been. It's going to be in blue states where it's really going to have some effects. It'll be interesting though to see if the judges will evict. And so that is one of the strange things about the eviction process. It really matters what county you're in and where your properties are at, and then how the judges rule on evictions and the process. Because they could say, hey, like, she's pregnant or whatever, you need to give her another 60-day stay to see if she can make up for it. I mean, that doesn't happen in Texas very often, but I've seen strange things happen even in Harris County.
Okay.
We own most of our stuff outside of Harris County. But
Harris County's blue, by the way.
But
don't know.
Coming from Illinois,
yeah,
I am extremely familiar with the opposite end of the spectrum.
Okay.
Which is where like they may be able to drag in normal times, a tenant may be able to drag on the process for 4 to 6 months and trash your place in the meantime. And so, yeah, I mean, my sister's got tenants up there. She lives in Illinois, and she's got tenants up there that haven't paid her a dime since March of last year.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean,
it's terrible.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they're just holding on for dear life. Because, I mean, ultimately, as long as you can continue to carry and hold on to the properties, that's who's going to win at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And when you talk about what's going to happen, I don't know that there's going to be a huge swing. I mean, everybody's like, oh, we're going to buy fire sale properties, but I'm just like, it was an eviction moratorium. Why would there be a bunch of foreclosures? Mm-hmm. Like, those are two completely separate things, right?
Right, they're rented.
Yeah,
somebody owns it. It's
exactly.
a rental.
Exactly.
Unless that person didn't collect and they weren't able to hold and they haven't been making their payments.
Some of the strangest things I've seen though are high-end Airbnbs where people are moving in and not leaving.
Ah.
And so that it has been interesting. And
what do you mean? People that go in, rent it for a month, and then just stay?
Yeah.
Huh. And that falls under that moratorium too?
There's different stories out there about it in certain states, like Washington State.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's a whole different ballgame because long-term rentals, generally, I mean, you're dealing with like market rents and things like that. But short-term rentals, I mean, some of these people have put a bunch of money into them to make them high-end, right? And you're renting them for thousands of dollars a week in some cases. So like these guys have moved in, like I've seen it up in the Northeast specifically where they may move in for a month up in like Connecticut or an area like that, New Hampshire, and they rent it for $12,000 for the month, and that note on that property might be $6,000, and they haven't left in 11 months or paid.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
So those type of situations are probably putting people
at risk.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. A personal question because I want to get some knowledge from you now that you're here and you do a lot of real estate. I don't own my home.
Okay.
I don't own a property here in the U.S. I listen to Grant Cardone often. His opinion is do not own the home that you live in.
Yep.
He is under the opinion that that's owned by the bank anyways, and it's a liability. So if you're going to own a property, own a rental property, investment property, etc. What are your thoughts on that, and what would you recommend somebody Is that accurate or like?
Well, I mean, it is. Everything he says is correct.
Yeah.
You could argue, though, that like in Houston, we're appreciating right now at 23% from June of last year to June of this year, 23%.
Jesus.
And so if you own your home, I would argue that you could leverage that home, refinance, cash out, pull out a couple $100,000, and then take it and go do something else with it, right?
Right.
Buy more rental properties or whatever you want to do.
Right.
So it is an asset from that standpoint, but I don't disagree with him that your home is a liability. He's just dealing with like a different level, right? Because he's renting his houses for like $100,000 a month.
Got it.
And like, so they just move around. They're like, we live in Miami, we live in Aspen, we live here, we live there, and he has no attachment. So it's actually a brilliant way to live if your necessity living expense budget is
that high,
$500,000 a month. Like
he's on another level.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the point. I think that for people that are just getting started out, especially in a market like we're dealing with now, if you bought your house in 2017 in Houston, it's doubled in value. So you think about like somebody that went in and bought a $250,000 house, now it's worth $500,000. They actually have access to $150,000 or $175,000 in cash if they know how to deploy it properly. I would say like that's a smart move.
But I haven't bought a house.
Right.
I have to go into this peak market.
Right.
Like I've learned from the stock market, do not buy when the fucking prices are high.
Right.
So is buying right now?
I think there's still time. I still think we have 24, 36 months in this market.
Fuck, but at 23% appreciation, I mean, how if it does fall, like how bad could it be?
Well, I don't think it's going to dip because, I mean, if you look at what's going on monetarily throughout the world, I mean, the currency, all these governments are lighting their currency on fire right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
inflation's
we're stimulating, and so is everybody else. I mean, I work with Canadian business owners, and they're getting giant stipends every month to stay closed. And so, like, I mean, it's unsustainable if you think the Canadian dollar is worth anything. Or even, I mean, our dollar. Everybody's saying, no, there's no inflation, but bullshit, there's no inflation.
Yeah, bullshit, there's no inflation.
Yeah. I mean,
our build-out costs have increased 50% in the past 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No question. I believe it. I mean, OSB is $96 a board. Like,
it used to be what?
$7? $7.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Before Harvey.
Yeah.
It went up to 14 during Harvey, and we were like, oh, they're fucking gouging us.
And now look at it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now it's 10x that.
Oh, and I get the message that it's gonna when it comes back down, we're gonna bring down our prices. Bullshit, they're gonna bring it down. Why would they?
No, they'll never come back down. I mean, maybe they'll settle at $54 a board,
right? And
they'll still be crushing it. But as far as you go, man, like we said, like put your money into this place.
Yeah.
Like
that's where my money's going.
Right. And so I don't know. I mean, if you want to buy a house, if you want to settle down, it sounds more fun to move around like Grant Cardone does to me.
It does. Yeah, no, so I understand where I'm at right now. Like, I have to really think about, because I'm going to have to be tied down, right? I mean, the market's pretty liquid, so if you did want to move, but it doesn't make any sense to move when you're that, if you're not putting that much money down to get a house, so move around. So I don't know, we'll see. But I think that's something that I'm intrigued how somebody answers that question, especially people that are in real estate.
Yeah, see, people like
it's definitely not an investment.
I've had a bunch. No, hell no, it's not. It's like a place to make your kids comfortable,
right?
And have a little bit of.
And due to the market conditions now, people have equity, and it's grown in equity, and now can you use that equity to multiply and to invest it elsewhere and to bridge or to arbitrage the low interest rate that you can get a HELOC, for example, and go out and put it into something like a concession trailer or food truck. You know, get your HELOC, put it into a food truck, multiply your income.
Yeah, I mean it's a wonderful time to be alive, honestly, because there's just a million options. Because imagine the example that I just used for a $250,000 house in 2017. I mean, that couple's probably 32 years old, and they could access a couple $100,000 in cash as like a normal like W-2 employee. Like, if they're sophisticated enough to make that work for them, they can change their entire life in a short period of time. You know what I mean? Like, because you take out $200,000 and get a 20% return on it that starts returning next month, instead of conventionally like work till you're 65 and then we'll give it back to you. Like, fuck that.
No.
Like, I want that shit in 30 days.
Exactly.
It needs to pay me next time that the rent's due.
Right. right. Cash flowing properties, etc. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Brother, I've loved jamming with you today. I've learned a shit ton. Where can my listeners find you?
Yeah, I have a podcast, The Tactical Empire, that you mentioned. The best place to reach me is Jeff at therealjeffsmith.com. Like, that's just my email address. You can send me a message there, or I'm Jeff Smith _HTX on Instagram, and then just Jeff Smith on Facebook, man.
The Real Jeff Smith.
The Real.
Because there's probably thousands upon hundreds of thousands of Jeff Smiths out there.
Yeah, it keeps me anonymous.
It's great to have you, man. And I make sure to subscribe to his podcast, The Tactical Empire. If you got value from this podcast today, I don't run ads. I do see, we did start putting out some Trailer King stuff, right? We're in our office, right? The Trailer Kings does support my podcast, so it's something that I like to do, but I don't run ads. And the Tactical Empire just launched a couple weeks ago or a month ago.
Yep, month ago.
So make sure you subscribe to his podcast. He's going to be having a ton of amazing guests, and hopefully I'll get an invitation here soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, bro.
All right.